Good day, everybody. This is Dr. Bruce. Today we're going to be looking at basic techniques for data analysis. I'm going to give you just enough information to be dangerous when it comes to the data sets that your agency might collect if you work for an agency, or that you might otherwise be given as an assignment, or that you might be able to download from any number of police department open data portals. So as I've said in the past, crime analysis is a process of asking and answering questions. Right? It's whether we're doing tactical analysis, strategic analysis, intelligence analysis, or administrative analysis, we have a number of questions. What crime is up and down right now? What are the characteristics of those crimes? What is the number one hotspot in town? What time of day is it hot? Did it respond to the hotspot policing strategy we tried to implement last week? And so on and so forth. We have to be able to answer these questions, and in order to do that, we need the appropriate techniques. So we're not going to obviously cover every possible analytical technique in this video, but we'll do enough to get you started with most structured data sets. Specifically in this video, we are going to cover filtering, sorting, aggregation, formulas and functions, and the use of structured query language, or SQL queries. And with the amount of time we have, we're just going to scratch the surface on that last topic. We are going to be using Microsoft Excel and Microsoft Access, very common, very easy to obtain applications. And for a data set, which you will have if you are taking this as one of my classes, we're going to be using 2024 crime data that I've downloaded from the Kansas City Police Department. They make it openly available for people to download and analyze, so that's what I have done. But if you have any comparable data set that has dates and text and structured data within it, you should be just fine. Just keep in mind, if your data looks a little bit different than mine, you're going to have to really pay attention to the spirit of these lessons and extrapolate to your particular data set, not focus so much on the literal things that I do. So if I'm writing a formula that refers to cell C6 or something like that, you're going to need to make the adjustment with your data set to apply the same formula. So as I say, this is Microsoft Excel, and we have a data set of crimes in here that includes a report number, the reported date and time, the from date and time, and the to date and time. What those are basically indicators of when the crime actually happened versus when it was reported. And it's particularly common for crimes like auto theft or burglary or vandalism to have a range where the victim didn't know exactly what time it happened, and therefore reported that I left the house at 8 o'clock in the morning. I came back at 4 p.m., and so we should expect a time of 0800 in the from time and a time of 1600 in the to time. Now, those two times, there's, I don't know, they're used reasonably often, but I suspect that, like most agencies, the Kansas City Police Department's officers don't use these fields with a lot of fidelity. So, for instance, here's an example of an auto theft that has a from time of 1 minute before it was reported. That's not impossible. If the victim saw somebody steal the car and drive it away, and frankly, a time of 2:30 in the morning seems to make that more likely. If it had been reported at 7 in the morning, that would be less likely. But most of the time, when something like an auto theft or a burglary has an exact time and no from and to time that's different from the report time, probably the officer just didn't collect the from and to time. But we're going to, there's only so much we can do. We don't have the original reports, so we're going to work with the data and just accept the fact that it might be bad data. So let's jump right into the techniques and cover sorting. Sorting can be found on the data ribbon. And what I highly recommend you do with most of these tools is, after you find them on their respective ribbons, right-click on them. That's filter. I'm sorry. We're going to be using the sort tools here, ascending and descending. But I highly recommend you right-click on the tools and choose Add to Quick Access Toolbar. Then it will appear on your quick access toolbar here, and you don't have to go hunt for them anymore. So these are the most common tools that I use. The other thing you probably want to do, if you haven't already done it, is move your quick access toolbar below the ribbon. So I think by default it comes with the quick access toolbar up here, away from where your actual data is. So most people, I think, would get more use out of it if you show it below the ribbon and it's here between the ribbon and your data. That way, especially if you collapse the ribbon to give yourself some extra room, you still have your quick access toolbar and all of the tools that you've put on it. Okay, so the filtering tools, again, are here on the data ribbon. The sorting tools. There's a sort ascending and a sort descending, and then there's a sort button that lets you get freaky and do all kinds of things. We'll take a look at that. But most of what you need to do, you can do with the sort ascending and sort descending buttons. Now, when you use those, you want to be clicked in a single cell. You don't want to select the whole column. So let's say I want to sort in descending order by the date. So the more recent incidents are on top. If I select column B and click that, it's going to warn me, hey, if you don't expand the selection, you're just going to sort column D. And so then our data will be mismatched, and it will be very difficult, if not impossible, to get it back in line again. But if you just click within the column, doesn't matter where, it could be on the header, it could be anywhere within it, and then click the sort descending button, it will assume you want to sort the entire data table. And there we are. We have it sorted by the most recent date. If I want to sort it back in ascending order, I just click in the column and I click the sort ascending button. It works with offenses too. So if we want to see the worst crimes that were committed in Kansas City in 2024, if we can click in the IBR field. Notice it's called top IBR because you can have more than one crime per incident. So this particular data set just shows the most serious crime that was reported with this incident. And if we sort in ascending order, we see all of our murders first. And if we sort in descending order, we find our 90 Zs are all other crimes at the bottom. So that's really all there is to sorting. Now, notice when I sorted in descending order by time, the last report of the year isn't the one on top because I would also have to have sorted by date also. And if I try to sort by date at this, I would have had to sort by time also. I only sorted by date. And if I try to sort by time now, I'm just going to get the 2359, but multiple dates per year. So how do I get it so the last report of the year comes up, or the first report of the year? Well, what you want to do is sort first by the field that you really want to sort second, and then sort second by the field that you want to sort first. So for instance, if I want to go by date and then time, I want to sort by time first, and then by date. Sorry, my mouse is I have the worst mouse pad right now. I lost my data room. There we go. And now the literal first report of the year is on top. So we're seeing all the January 1st incidents in order by time. Similarly, if I want to sort in descending order, I want to do time first and then date. And now I see the last incident of the year on top. Now the sort button here, that really just has a more complicated way of doing what we just did, where if you want to sort by multiple things, then you can say I want to sort by date, and then newest to oldest, and then by time, largest to smallest, and we've achieved basically the same thing. So I don't use that sort button very often. I do most of my sorting with these two buttons. And that's really all there is to sorting. That's a pretty easy one, isn't it? So let's move on and look at filtering. So let's say we want to start asking questions like how many incidents of shoplifting did we have? Oh, there's a bad data element here, right there. That should be 23C for shoplifting, not 23H. Anyway, let's say we want, there we go, there's the 23C, you can see. Well, let's see how many incidents of shoplifting we had in 2024. So to do that, we turn on our filter button here on the data ribbon. Again, I've put it also on my quick access toolbar here. And the moment we click that, we get a little drop-down menu at the top of the every column, where the column name is. I'm going to bold those. Actually, let me do a couple other things while I'm at it. I bolded those, and I'm also going to click in cell B2 and click on the View menu and choose Freeze Panes, and then Freeze Panes again. And that will, if I'm in B2 and I do that, and that literally means B2 in your case too, below the top column and to the right of the leftmost, below the top row to the right of the leftmost column, so in B2, if you freeze it there, then as we move around the sheet, as we scroll down, the column will remain on top, the top column, the top row, I don't know, I'm having trouble with that today, and the left column will remain intact, so we can always sort of see where we are, even as we scroll and jump around. All right. So we've got the filtering turned on, we've got our freezing turned on. So we want to ask a question like, how many shopliftings were reported in 2024? We can just click that little drop down and basically uncheck the box that says select all. So all the individual crimes are unselected, and then we click on the one that we want, which is 23C, shoplifting. Now, if you don't know what shoplifting is in NIBR's code, which I don't suspect most people do, you could instead use the description over here. I wouldn't use the offense field. That's kind of like a local offense field. This description here goes with the IBR field so that it's always going to align with the code in the top IBR field. And so we can uncheck everything and then go select shoplifting and check that. And in the lower left-hand corner, you can barely see it, but in the lower left-hand corner, it tells you how many records you just filtered. And it says there are 3,308 of 61,809. All right, so 3,308 shoplifting incidents were coded in Kansas City in 2024. If we want to know how many homicides there were, or murders, we can get everything back, and then go and uncheck that, and check murder. And that shows us 138 murders reported in 2024. If we want multiple things, of course, we can select multiple things. So if we're interested in murder or aggravated assault, which is that's where attempted murders would be, we get 4,036 incidents there. Now we can filter by multiple fields at once. So if we're only interested in murders and aggravated assaults that occurred in the month of July, say, we can go over here to the reported date, and fortunately it's broken out the months for us. It does that with dates. So we can unselect select all, go down here and say only show us the month of July. And we get 385 incidents in July. Now there aren't many opportunities in this particular data set to do text-based sorting, but notice a lot of the incidents of assault here are, it says domestic in the offense field, and I don't know, there might be other domestic related violence incidents in this data set, and maybe the word domestic is in the beginning, maybe it's not. So let's get all of our incidents back. So I'm going to go to my reported date. There's a couple of ways we could do it. We could go to each of the columns we've already filtered and choose clear filter from, and it will clear it. We can also go to the data menu, and there's an option here to just clear all filters. I've put that in my quick access toolbar, so we can do that too. You could also just turn the filters off and turn them back on again, and it would clear any active filter. Anyway, let's say we want to find the word domestic anywhere within the offense field. We could go here to the drop down, and there's a way to do it with the search, but I prefer to do it this way. Click on the text filters and then choose contains. And I will say I want to find all incidents where the offense field contains the word domestic. And we hit OK. And yeah, there's a few that where the word domestic is not at the beginning, so it would have been hard to find those in the list. Now, I wouldn't regard this as an authoritative list of all domestic incidents. I would want to probably find like a relationship field in the data set for that, which we don't have, but it illustrates how the text filter works. Another one might be if we're over here in the address, and we're interested in all the stuff that occurred at Kauffman Stadium, where the Kansas City Royals play, right? So let's say we want to find everything that happened at 1 Royal Way, which is the address of the stadium. We can click on this and then try to find 1 Royal Way in the list. We can do a search even. And well, that's interesting. How about 0 Royal Way is the stadium too, and then we've got Royal Way and Stadium Drive, and Royal Way. So we want basically anything. There's nothing else on Royal Way. So really, if Royal Way shows up in here at all, we want to see it. And so again, we could use contains to say it contains Royal Way. Now that's not very many incidents, is it? You'd expect a lot more at a major sports stadium. So it could be that they're just doing a really good job keeping crime down there. Or maybe there's another option for how the address shows up. Maybe sometimes it's just listed as Kauffman Stadium. Let's try it, looking for contains Royal Way or Kauffman. No, that didn't do anything. What about stadium? Wait a minute. I feel like it didn't apply. Okay, it did. Or stadium. Nope, didn't pick up any new ones. All right, maybe Royal Way they've just done a really good job keeping crime at a minimum at the stadium. So, but anyway, that's how you would do it if you wanted to try to find multiple examples. It keeps deleting the one that it's not finding any of. I'm just curious. No, okay. Okay, so we'll clear the filter here and get back to our original data set. But that's how you filter, and that's how you can ask very quick questions about crimes and dates and times and so forth. Then we're going to look at aggregation. Now, aggregation summarizes data. So we showed, through that how you could find all murders in Kansas City in 2024. But what if we wanted to count up every crime in 2024? We certainly don't want to have to do each one of every crime individually and then write down the answer in a notepad or something like that. Aggregation will allow us to summarize by the IBR code or the description field or both, and give us a count of everything that happened in 2024. The best way to do aggregation in Microsoft Excel is through pivot tables. So you can create a pivot table by clicking anywhere in the table that you want to base a pivot table on, and then choosing, and don't select multiple fields, just click somewhere in Excel, and then we'll go to the Insert menu and Pivot Table, and from Table Range we'll choose. And if we're clicked in the table already, it will detect that and automatically select that, so we're good there. So we just have to hit OK. And we have our pivot table. Now a pivot table is made of 4 things: filters, columns, rows, and values. And there you can see them in the pane in the lower right hand corner here. So columns and rows are typically what you're going to aggregate by. So let's say we want to count up how many of each offense there was. Now remember, description is the field that had the offense spelled out, right? So let's take that description field, and I'm going to drag it and drop it here into the rows box. And you see what happens. It makes a unique row in my pivot table for all of the offenses that exist in the data set. Nothing duplicated. And now we want to know, okay, how many of each one are there? Well, in the values box, we're going to count something. And it really doesn't matter what we count because we're just counting. We could put the description field in there. But I usually use the primary key for the table, which is the report number, and count that. Because we always know, it has to be a field that always has something in it. If there's any blanks, it won't count them. So the primary key, the report number, is never going to be blank. So I'll drop that here in the values, and you can see that it put a count automatically because it's an alphanumeric field, so there's really nothing else you can do with an alphanumeric field. And now we've got a count of all of the crimes that happened in 2024. 138 murders, 8,971 motor vehicle thefts, 462 drug violations, etc., 107 arsons. You get the idea. So this is how you could quickly get a nice report of everything that happened in Kansas City in 2024. Let's say you want to break that down by well, that's interesting. When we were talking about domestic violence, I forgot that there was a DV flag field here. That means so that they do have another field to determine if it was domestic. Although most of the time it's not, but anyway, let's go ahead and make use of that back in our pivot table. So we want to break these down by whether they're domestic or not. So we take the DV flag and we put it in the columns, and we can see, okay, of 3,898 aggravated assaults, 754 were domestic violence, and 3,144 were not. Some intimidation, some high numbers there. You got domestic burglaries, that happens, ex-boyfriends and ex-girlfriends and ex-wives and husbands break into their ex-spouses' houses. There's homicide here. That seems unlikely that only 3 out of 138 were domestic. So I have to wonder about the quality of that field. But then on the other hand, the simple assault figure seems accurate. Almost half. Of a third. Yeah, that seems a little bit low. So I don't know how well they're using that field, but anyway, it's there, and we can see which crimes have the highest percentage of domestic violence. How would we do that, by the way? See the highest percentage rather than just the highest count. Well, we can change what we're seeing. So over here where the values are, instead of the count, we can go into the value field settings and say we want to see, instead of a count, we want to show the values as percentages. And what do we want to see percentages of? Well, in this case, we're going to look at percentages of the row total, right? Because we want to see, basically, here, what percentage is 754 out of 3898. So we're going to use percentage of the row total. and then we could scan this and see which crime is most likely to be domestic, and it turns out it's simple assault at about 32%, followed by kidnapping and abduction at about 28%. If I want my counts back, I can just go back here and tell it to not do any calculations. All right, now, what about filters? Well, filters allow us to, as you might expect, filter the data that we're seeing in front of us, but they don't play a role in the final pivot table. So let's say we're only interested in this breakdown of domestic and non-domestic for a particular area of the city. So we'll take the area field and we'll drag it over here to the filters box, and we'll get a drop down, a filter up at the top here, and we can say, okay, well, I don't know what these mean. Okay, I'm pretty sure it's something like Central Patrol District, East Patrol District, North Patrol District, South, Central, South. I'm not sure what OS is, but I think that's what these abbreviations stand for. So let's say we're just interested in the central one, CPD, and OK. And so now you notice the numbers got a lot smaller because they're being filtered to only show us the breakdown of incidents in the Central Patrol District. So let's ask a question like, let's get rid of all of our stuff and start fresh here. There's also a field in here called reporting district, which if we drop that into rows, yeah, notice there's a lot of them, right? So those are very small areas. Let's see about beats. Beats are somewhere in between areas and reporting districts. There's a few of them, but not as many as there are reporting districts. So let's work with beats. Let's say we want to know which beats have the highest rate of auto-related crime. So there are two auto-related crimes explicitly in the data set: auto theft and theft from. Oh, I'm sorry. There's three: auto theft, theft from a motor vehicle, and theft of motor vehicle parts. So let's say we want to know what beats have the highest counts of those crimes. So we would take the beat field and put it in rows. Now this is telling us all crimes right now. We can sort by this, by the way, so when it's done, we can click in the count field and use our sort largest to smallest to sort it. We see beat number 113 has the highest number. I'll try to get for those who are taking this as one of my classes, I will try to upload a map of Kansas City police beats, although you should be able to find one on their website too. Anyway, but as I said, we're only interested in auto-related crimes. So what we're going to do is put the offense field, the description field, into the filter box. Go up here, and we want to tell it to let us select multiple items. We will turn them all off, and then we will go find motor vehicle theft, theft from a motor vehicle, and theft of vehicle parts and accessories. So those three incidents we'll check, hit OK, and it doesn't change actually. Some of the other positions change, but beat number 113 is by far the highest for those motor vehicle crimes. Now, I was about to get myself distracted by bringing up a map or trying to find a map of Kansas City police beats and trying to figure out exactly what's going on in beat number 113, looking for geographic features that would explain why the theft, the vehicle-related crime rate is so high, but that's what your assignment is likely about, and so merging that type of qualitative and quantitative analysis is important in crime analysis. But let's stick to just the quantitative methods here, and we'll learn that other stuff in future videos. So that's about it. Once you have a command of how rows, columns, filters, and values work, really, if the data exists within the data set that you have, there really isn't a question that you can't ask, or something that you can't summarize. But what happens if the data doesn't exist in the data set you have? For instance, what if I want to break down crimes by month? I want to see how they take off that filter. I want to break it down to see how the crimes break down by month of the year. Is summer worse than other months? Well, I've got that reported date, and I've got the from date and the to date. I can just use the reported date. But if I drop that into the columns here, it will show me. It will automatically group by month. We can tell it here that we want to do a different type of grouping if we wanted to, but it sensed that we probably didn't want to see every single individual date across the top of the screen. But what if it gets it wrong, or that it becomes annoying to work with that, or more importantly, what if we want something like the day of the week rather than the month, which isn't easy to pull out of it from here. Back in the original sheet here, we can create new data out of the data that we already have. Obviously, we can't create data if it simply doesn't exist, but if we have a reason to aggregate by the day of the week, or the year, or the month, or the street rather than the full address. I'm trying to think of any other obvious ones that come to mind here. We can do that by the hour of the day would be a good one, right? So we have the times, but we don't have the exact time. Aggregating by that is going to give us a lot of very small numbers for each minute. What if we want to just aggregate by the hour of the day, or maybe even by some larger time grouping like the shift? Well, to do that, we would have to enter a formula in order to create some new data. So I'm going to insert some columns here between B and C. And you do that by right-clicking on the column header to the right of where you want to insert. So I'm going to right-click on the header for column C and choose Insert, and then I'm just going to hit Control Y a couple of times, which is the redo option to repeat what I just did. And I'm going to title these year, month, and the day of the week. And in order to populate these, I need to use formulas or functions. Now, formulas and functions are in Excel are kind of, well, functions are parts of formulas, I guess is the way to say it. Formula is the larger term. Other applications would call formulas expressions. There's no real wrong way to say it, I suppose. But formulas can include combinations of functions, calculations, and cell references. So I'm going to insert another one here just to play with, so you don't get confused. Play around. Okay. So the simplest formulas simply refer to other cells, right? So if I type equal, they always begin with equals. Every formula begins with an equals sign. That's how you tell Excel, don't represent what I'm about to type literally. Show me the results of this formula. And then I can say, I don't know, B2. Simply refer to another cell. and it will show me exactly what is in B2, which is the reported date. I could try to do some calculations. Maybe I could take B2 and add 1 to it, and it would show me the date one day after the one that I'd calculated. We don't have a lot of other numbers to work with to do calculations with in this particular data set. We're going to see more of this when we do the quantitative analysis techniques in a later video, more with calculations. Another thing we can do is functions. Functions are like pre-programmed bits of code that you have certain inputs that are called arguments, and then they result in certain outputs. There are some simple functions that don't have any arguments at all. Today, there's a function called today, and today simply, you always have to have an open and closed parentheses after a function, and usually you put arguments within those parentheses, but today doesn't have any arguments. It simply calculates today's date, and that is indeed the date that I'm recording this video. Now is a function that simply calculates the current date and time. It's the same as today, except it also has a time in there, although this is formatted to only display the date right now. So I would have to go in and change the formatting. No, that's not what I want. There we go. And there you go. It is indeed just shy of 4 p.m. that I'm doing this video. And then there's a function called rand, which simply gives you a random number between 0 and 1. Again, because of my formatting, it thinks I want a date and time, but if I go back to general, you'll see what I get. So it just does a random number. So there's functions that don't require a lot of arguments. I'll get rid of this. The functions that we want to use for year, month, and day of the week do have arguments, however. There's a function called year that simply takes the year out of a date field. So there's only one argument. Excuse me. There's only one argument, the name of the field that we're extracting the year from. And then you close the parentheses. Now, why is it saying 7/16/1905? Well, because it thinks I want this column formatted as a date, and so it's representing 2024 in date form, and this is how many days that elapsed. 2024 days from January 1st, 1900 was July 16th, 1905. Why this is happening isn't important right now, but what I can do is simply select the column and change it from, although it says general at the top, it's dates applied to most of those cells, and if I just need to select it again, and now it's going to show me what I really want, which is the year. To fill that down for all of the other rows, I simply need to double click this little nib in the lower right hand corner, and that sends that formula down, adjusting it by one row reference for every row it goes down. So it's going to give me 2024 until it starts to encounter 2023. Oh, sorry, there is no. I don't know why I did year. I forgot I only have 2024 here. But that's how you would do it if you had a data set that had more years. Okay, month, same type of function. It simply has one argument, the field that we want to extract the month from. And we fill that down. Again, it's trying to display the results in date format, but after we fill it or before we fill it, we can change it back to general formatting, and then we get what we're looking for, a 12 for all the stuff that happened in December, a 7 for the stuff that happened in July, and things like that. Okay, day of week's a little more complicated. There is a function called weekday that gives us a numeric day of the week, but I always forget whether Sunday is first or second or seventh or whatever. So what I want is the textual day of the week, and to do that we use a function called text that has two arguments. The field that we want to extract it from and then a comma, and then what do we want to see. So DDD is what I want to see, 3 Ds in a row. And that gives me the 3-letter day of the week. Now, yes, I'm doing all of this on the reported date. Why wouldn't I do it on the from date and the from time, or the to date and the to time? Well, because those aren't always filled in, and compensating for bad data or missing data in those fields is more than I want to introduce right now in this 1-hour video. But yes, in real life, I probably would use some sort of combination of the from date and to date and times in order to identify what day of the week the crime actually happened, rather than the day of the week that the incident was reported. For a lot of them, it's not going to be different, but for some that it will. And if this was a real data set and I was doing a real analysis, I would definitely want to make use of these fields somehow. Okay, so that's a little bit about functions and formulas. There are a lot more, but for this video, again, basic techniques, just trying to get you and far enough into this to make it to allow you to do some basic stuff. So we'll stop there. What we have to do, though, is go back to our pivot table, and if we want to use those new fields, okay, which, as you can see, they're not appearing here in the list. So if we actually want to use them, we're going to need to refresh the pivot table, and we can do that from the Design Pivot Table, no, the Pivot Table Analyze ribbon. There's this button here called Refresh, and if we hit that, it will pick up the new fields here, year, month, and day of the week, and now we can analyze by dropping the day of the week, say, into the column references. We can analyze how the crime changes across the day of the week. Look, for instance, how burglary drops a lot on weekends. And that's mostly residential burglaries, probably, because people are home on weekends, and so burglars don't have as much of a chance to break in. Commercial burglaries might stay high on weekends, but why does Monday have so many? Monday is by far the highest at 500. Remember, this is the day of the report that we're doing. So this is all of the businesses getting back Monday and discovering that their businesses were broken into over the weekend, and therefore they reported on Monday, and that's why the number is so high. I think it's for a similar reason you have like a decrease in credit card and automated teller machine fraud on weekends, because people don't report them on weekends because they don't notice them until the bank processes the transaction the following week. And so you see a big uptick here on Monday, and an even bigger one on Tuesday. Driving under the influence, on the other hand, yes, as you might expect, people going out, partying on weekends, but also police are more likely to enforce, I suppose, more likely to watch out for that activity on weekends, and therefore they just happen to make more arrests at that time. So these numbers make a lot of sense to me. With the combination of tools that we have used, you should be able to ask most questions that you need to ask of a single table data set, like this Kansas City Police crime data set here, that you will be using if you're taking a class with me. But we do have to talk briefly about relational data. We have to talk about multiple table data sets, because what if we have a system, like any police record system, where we want to be able to analyze people, but there can be multiple people for every incident. So you can't just have a single table storing the data, or if you did, you'd have to replicate the incident data for every person, and then you wouldn't be able to ask questions like just how many incidents did I have. You'd be getting a count of how many people you had. So in order to do any deep analysis with relational data, you need a proper relational database system. And that is Microsoft Access. Now, if you're taking this class with me, I probably have not required you to use Access for any assignment, because some students have Macs and there's no Mac version of access, and moreover, it's just a much more difficult application to get used to it if you've never used it before. But I at least want to introduce it, and those of you who have already had plenty of experience with Excel, you're welcome to use Access to do the assignments and to show me what kind of analytical skills you have. So that data set that we were looking at before was a data set that I created from what I actually downloaded from the Kansas City Police Department, which is this data table here. And as you can see, there are all kinds of duplications in the report number, and then consequently the reported date, time, the from date and time, the type of crime, and some of the other values in the field. Why does that happen? Well, because in this case, this report number 00005 had 2 crimes associated with it, aggravated assault and vandalism, so we needed a row to account for each crime. But obviously those are duplicated multiple times, or triplicated a few times, because as we scroll over to the right and we see person information, the involvement, the race and sex and age of the victim and the suspect, we have to have a row to account for the different victims. So there looks like there was 2 victims, a white male who was 42 and a white female who was 39, one suspect who was a black male, and then every one of those had to be replicated twice for the 2 different crimes. So again, now if we ask a question of this data set, like how many aggravated assaults did we have in Kansas City, we're going to get 6 for this one incident, when in fact there was only 1 aggravated assault, but there were 6 combinations of people associated with that aggravated assault. Now I know in the original Kansas City database this is not how the data is. It's properly stored in multiple tables, but what they allow you to download, for convenience sake, they put it all in one table. Well, what I did was split it back out into the 3 tables that I know must exist in the original system. One table for the crime, where the report number is not ever duplicated. One table for the offenses associated with each crime. In the Excel spreadsheet, I just took the most important one, the top one, but this is going to have everyone. And then the people associated with each crime. And so, with the data separated into these multiple tables, we can ask questions without worrying about getting duplications unless we want the duplications. Now, the way we ask questions in Microsoft Access rather than Excel is by creating something called a query. And that's located here on the Create ribbon. And then Query Design, which as you can see I've added to my Quick Access toolbar. In the Query Design window, we can pull in the tables that we want to ask questions of. So if we only want to ask questions of the crime table, like how many incidents did we have on a particular address, or just where the top offense was a particular offense, or in a particular beat, or what have you, we don't have to bring in the other tables and get the duplications that we would get. So I'm going to, for instance, add the report number, the report date, the IBR, top IBR, the description, the beat, and sure, the domestic violence flag. So I'm just double clicking on those to add them to the fields down here, and this shows us what fields our query is going to give us. Okay. And we can constantly change to see the results of the query by clicking on this view button in the upper left hand corner. That'll take us to the results. This takes us back to the design. Let's say we want to find all incidents that happened in beat 543 that were domestic. So in the criteria row here, under the beat column, we would type 543, and then for the DV flag, we would type true for indicating it's domestic. We'll run that. And here's our count in a second. It takes a second to update. You can force it by clicking on last record. 69 incidents in beat number 543 that had the domestic violence flag set to true. Now, if we pull in the offenses table, first of all, we have to make sure that they're linked. So this field here in the crime table that's never duplicated, the report number, that's called the primary key. A field that is never duplicated is called the primary key. In the offenses field, it could be duplicated, so the primary key is a combination of the report number and the IBR code. So you don't need the same IBR code more than once in the offenses table. Anyway, we need to drag and drop report number to report number. If we don't make this connection, it will relate every record in the one table to every record in the other table, and you'll get millions of results, and it will be completely invalid. So we drag and drop that, but we've now changed the nature of the question that we're asking. Hold on, I forgot how many results I got. So I had 569 incidents before, right? So by adding the offenses table, we are changing the question, and the question that we're now asking is what offenses do we have associated with things in beat 543 where the domestic violence flag is true. Even if I don't add anything from this table, when I run it, I now have 77 results with at least some of the incidents numbers duplicated. There's not really a duplication here. It's still only one record in the crime table, but it's showing me two rows to account for the fact that there are two records in the offenses table. So if we don't care about the offense, if we only care about crimes in beat 543 that have the domestic violence flag set to true, we probably don't want to include this additional table. But what if we wanted to ask a question like, I want to see those cases in beat 543 where the domestic violence flag is set to true and the victim is under the age of 18 years old. So we would need the people table for that. Again, related through the report number. It figured it out for some reason that time. And then we could add the age field. And then we could say less than, what did I say, 18? Okay, so the age is a text field. Well, looks like I don't even have any. So first of all, we would need the involvement field, because the person table has both suspects and victims. Victims are, I don't know, some of them have Vic, some are like victim witnesses, so they're both, I don't know what CMP Vic means. Complainant, maybe? They're both the complainant and the victim. Anyway, we want to find the letters Vic anywhere within this involvement field, whether it's beginning, end, or somewhere in the middle. And we can do that by putting an asterisk on either side of what we're looking for. So here we searched only for the word true. But here we're looking for VIC anywhere within that field. And when we leave it after we type that, it puts the word like in front of it and puts quotes around it for us. That's fine. So we run that, and we have 90 victims of domestic incidents in beat 543. So I guess none of them were under the age of 20. As I scan the list. So let's see how many of them are over the age of 50, say. So, greater than 50. And there we get 4 incidents in which the victim is over the age of 50 and has been subjected to a domestic violence incident in beat 543. Actually, I'm sorry, we don't have 4 incidents. We have 4 victims of that age. It looks like in this particular case here, there were 2 victims of exactly the age of 52. I'm not sure how that happened, but we're going to have to assume that it's correct. So this is, remember, it's counting people now. It's not counting individual incidents. Now, if all of that didn't make a lot of sense to you, don't worry about it. That's relational database stuff. You'll have to work up to that after working with a single table for a while. But the last thing that I'll point out here is that by doing this query, we have been typing, we've been working with SQL code. Access gives us a front end for it, but we can see it by going to the View menu here and choosing SQL View, and we can see what the actual structured query language or SQL code is for this particular query. You could copy and paste this, send it to somebody else, a colleague, if they were trying to do the same thing, and then they could paste it in here and then replicate the query without actually having to send the access object to them. SQL is a very common language. It's used by almost every database system these days to ask questions about data. And it's really helpful to know, if you're an analyst, to know how to write the code from scratch, but Access gives us a way to do it without having to know the raw code. Now again, if you're doing this for me, don't worry about the Access part unless you are already experienced with Excel and want a new challenge. But you should be able to ask most of the questions that I would have put in the assignment with a combination of filters and aggregation in pivot tables. If you're taking the course with me, you should also have a couple of dedicated help sessions where you can come in and hang out and show me what problems you're having, or ask me to walk you through a particular question or something like that. So make sure you make use of those. If you're not taking a course with me and you're just using this video or watching this video, but you'd still like that sort of help, you're always happy. I'm always happy to take your questions. You're definitely welcome to get in touch with me, and if it's really something complicated, we can set up a connection. Here's my contact information. So in this video, we covered sorting, we covered aggregation, we covered filtering, and we did a little bit with relational databases and SQL. That should give you enough tools to answer the questions that I would have posed in any homework assignment. They're not everything, obviously, but almost everything else we do in data analysis builds upon those tools that we've just looked at. So mastering those is the key to becoming an effective data analyst. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next time.